All right. Yee. So, hello. Um, you might see a tile. Um, although I don't understand why Zoom does this when every now and then the tiles just move around and the person I'm looking at just disappears. Anyway, you might see a tile that has the name under it, Lindsay Lazo, who is here to tell us all about tutoring and more specifically logic tutoring. So I am going to turn the mic over to Lindsay and let them tell you everything that you need to know. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, hi there. So it's so good to see you all. I am your Philosophy 9 tutor. I am so glad I could jump on this Zoom. I was worried it would clash with my schedule, but I'm so glad I got to see some of y'all's faces. I am here because this class can get quite tough, but it's certainly not something where you aren't able to pass. I remember being in this class. It was quite tough for me at one point, and I was like, just gotta work through it, gotta visit with the tutor and see what's up. And so that's why I'm here. So let's see if I can share my screen. I just want to share my hours with you. Wonderful, yay! All right, so as I was introduced, my name is Lindsay, and my pronouns are they and them. I've been tutoring this since 2015, so I've been tutoring this a really, really long time. I love this subject. I had Mia as a professor when I took this class, and Mia is here 100% for your success and to see you do well. And I am here to be that support as well. Sometimes hearing it from another person or being able to talk about the different strategies for studying with someone who's really like, that's my specialty, is really helpful. So the way that you are going to access my tutoring hours is by enrolling into the LAPC Philosophy 9 tutoring Canvas shell. So you see it right here, so you could just type this in. Once I get off screen share, I'll just throw it in the chat, and it's very easy. You'll just end up clicking the link and then enroll in the course. And right there, you will have access to my schedule and my Zoom link, because I am staying on Zoom for this semester. So my hours are Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So they're all in the evening. I know some folks are working as essential workers during this pandemic time, and it's a little bit easier to access tutoring and to do work in the evening. So I'm also in school just like you, and so I set my hours to evening hours. So Tuesday and Thursday will be 5 to 8:30, and then Friday will be 5:30 to 8:30. And of course, I know you'll probably have questions throughout the week. And so I would encourage you to message me on Canvas. And I know that Mia also set up the little forum where you can ask questions. So feel free to do either of those. I'll try and monitor that throughout the week. And I will jump on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So the days that I work will also be the days that I answer any of your Canvas messages and stuff until 9 p.m. So if you message me over the weekend, just know that on Tuesday would be the soonest that I'd be able to message you back. So the sooner you're working on things and finding what's giving you a tough time, the easier it will be for me to help you out and give us a little bit more time to kind of go through it. So I'll share this in the chat, and I'll stop screen sharing. So feel free to enroll in that course. And tutoring is completely free. Even before when we were on campus and stuff, tutoring is completely free. I know people who charge upwards of $60, $80 for tutoring. So please, 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 utilize this free resource. I love talking about studying for logic. I love talking about logic. I'm going into counseling, so I also have a little bit of background you know, the program mapper that y'all are using now to kind of track how you transfer and whatnot. So if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. And if you need any other kinds of support, I can definitely direct you to the resources that are available online right now. Did I miss anything? You're 5. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you've covered everything. So just to confirm, the link that you've posted and that you also showed earlier when you shared the screen is a link that gets folks into philosophy tutoring as a whole. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So they can see
Yes.
kind of, and they can also there see your schedule. Like when you click on the page, I think we may have talked about this, but let me just very quickly.
And I can show
confirm
them what
this.
it looks like if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, so I'm on, actually, you know what, that would probably be a good idea. Let me stop my share because I'm in, what's it called, Student View. And that tends to make the, that page, that icon or link goes away.
Yeah, for sure. So, let me see. This screen. Okay. So, this is what the Canvas show will look like. So you'll enroll. This will be the very front page that you'll see. And it has 3 quick kind of, this is what you're going to do. We've really tried to streamline this so if you're in other courses, all of your courses will look like this. So you can scroll down and see my schedule here. I am in orange, really fun, bright color. And then if you are taking other philosophy tutoring, you know, philosophy classes that you need tutoring in, there are a lot of other tutors too. So all of these tutors down here tutor in different levels of the subject. So, you know, if you can't visit me, but you still need support, Connor also does Philosophy 9. So you can also look for Connor's schedule here.
Lindsay.
And then, I don't know if we're doing workshops this week, but normally we do workshops as well. And then when you're ready to join me, you'll just click this big red button. And it'll load probably faster on your internet than on mine. But you'll see that there is a tutoring for Lindsay link. And it'll be an active link, and then during the times that I'm scheduled, you can click that and it will send you to my Zoom room. And then you'll join, there'll probably be some other students, and we'll all kind of work together through our logic course. I believe there's 3 sections of Phil 9 this semester, which is
Yeah, that's correct, there are.
exciting.
Lindsay, you mentioned workshops, and for some folks, the workshops you've already done that are on available on Canvas as videos, and then the workshops that you're planning they're really popular and really successful. Can you tell folks who may not know what the benefit is of the workshops and what workshops you recommend regardless of where people are in their programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know not everyone is a philosophy major, and so going into a philosophy course, whether it's this one or another one, can be really tough because, you know, philosophy you write in a very specific way, the work that you're doing is very particular, you know, the writing style is very unique. And so we have a series of workshops. Last semester, we had a series of workshops. Again, I'm not 100% sure if we're duplicating or doing the exact same ones, but a lot of them were centered around like how to write a philosophy essay, how to read philosophy works, to really be able to dig into, you know, the work that you'll be doing. There were some workshops on kind of how to manage your online environment, because, you know, it's so easy to get distracted when we're all at home or, you know, whatever residence we're at. There were ones about kind of for our older returning students, specifically some of the needs that you might have, kind of how to get into the swing of things as we go into fall, and again, as we're online and trying to navigate technology. So a lot of them are more of the kind of study skills, learning skills based workshops. And then each individual tutor might also have like studying workshops that they run. So that will be displayed on Canvas. I'll probably be announced if you're in a class with that tutor. But for sure, just, you know, messaging any of us tutors on Canvas, you can ask around what kinds of workshops everyone will be running. They're running any. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, no, not at all. Well, thanks, because Dr. McQuitty sent an email out with a bunch of titles, and I thought, oh, these are great. You know, they'll work for a number of different issues. Like there was one, for example, like, what do I do if I can't get in touch with my instructor, or my instructor is non-responsive? What do I do? Because, you know, here we are just physically cut off from each other. So there are loads of great resources, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows about those, and that, you know, I think Adon had made a bunch of those sorts of videos that I just mentioned. And then, of course, you've got a bunch of workshops on success, and that's like yours, you know, peer-to-peer learning is your specialty. So we're so lucky that you're here. Thank you, Lindsay.
I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so excited to see y'all soon.
Yeah.
And if that's, I'll pop off. If that's, does anyone have any questions for me? Questions you have for me? Or about tutoring, what we would be doing? We're all good?
And you might get some too after I post the video, because the way that we've set things up is folks who want to and can make a meeting like this, you know, drop in, and they can drop in and out as they see fit, but I record everything, and then I'll throw the recording up on Canvas so that folks who can't or don't want to come can watch the video. So they'll get all this information at another point. So you may get some queries after today.
Yeah, for sure. And I will still be tutoring today, as long as, you know, my power doesn't go out or nothing. I'll be tutoring right after your class, so you can definitely drop by after you're done. And if you have any questions about the programs, I know some people are a little bit confused about how the programs work. If you have questions about the programs, I can also answer to that. I've worked with students who have Macs and students who have PC, and there are kind of different, unique things.
Well, and in fact, don't let me forget, this is actually just you and I, since I've got you right now. This is a community. You and I will chat because we've moved to a total web-based program. So we'll connect when you're when you've got a chance.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you for letting me drop by. I hope to see y'all soon.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this chat, but of course you've got the link. And then just as a reminder, what will happen is this: if you decide you want to sign up for tutoring, even if you end up not wanting to or needing logic tutoring, but you're maybe interested in tutoring for other philosophy courses, once you've signed up, that the tutoring tile or icon shows up on your dashboard, and then you can access any tutor that way. But also don't forget, while we're on the subject, the Center for Academic Success has tutoring across subjects. So even though we're focused on philosophy, because we're doing logic together, there's math tutoring and English tutoring and biology, and you name it, we have it at the Center for Academic Success. So please, please, please don't feel like you're all alone in your study. Okay, so that said, first, how's everybody doing? Are you managing in the heat and the bad air and all of that? I hope everybody is well. Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay. All right. Hang in there. It's freaking apocalypse is what it is. Then, okay, so as long as you're safe and well, that's good. I know that last week when we were chatting about the Logic Course Adventure, we talked about, registering and doing all that good stuff. And if you have any questions about that, let me know. But I'm going to assume that you've had an opportunity to go in and tool around and look around. Just as an FYI, last week, this week, are going to be the what do I want to say? The least complicated, to the extent that we're really going to focus on just a few items. So we'll do a bit of review from last week. We'll pick up then where we left off for this week and move on. But when we begin to enter the territory that we're starting next week, that's when things will get to be a bit more technical. For some of us, it'll be loads of fun. For some of us, it won't. But I hope that the style that you work, that the textbook is written in, is going to help you if you're having any struggles. And then, of course, as you know, I'm here to help, and there are tutors, so we should be in good shape. So any questions, problems, confusions about the text that you want to raise? And then any questions, and of course, if there's no question now, but a question arises, let me know. Next is any questions outstanding from last week before we launch into a review? Anything that we talked about that wasn't clear, that didn't make sense at the time for some other reason? So far, so good. I'm going to take silence as approval. Okay, so my new plan this week is to, rather than just do a screen share, I'm going to put documents up sort of side by side. So I think I can get all of us on the same side of the screen. I also want you to let me know if, when I pull up the doc that I want us to start with by way of kind of a review, if it looks too squashed on your screen. Okay, I don't know what sort of display you're using, so let me know if it's hard to see. So I need to get, not that one. Aha, this one. Okay. And actually, no, I'm wrong. Not this one, but this one. They sort of snap to fit the screen for some reason. Okay. So tell me if this document that I've entitled Additional Argument Practice is readable, or is it too small on your screen? Oh, you know why, Jennifer? I know why. By the way, Jennifer, if we've worked together, you already know what the problem is. It's me. I'm the problem. I didn't share my screen. Okay, here we go. Hold on. All right, so you can see it now, but I want us to be together. Whoopsie, that's not what I want. Oh crap, hold on. I thought I was being oh so clever. Okay. The one thing I don't have up, I don't think, but bear with me. The one thing I don't think I have up is our chat. Hold on. Yeah, I don't have our chat up. But so, I hope that's not a problem. Hold on just a sec. Oh, there it is. That's what I want. Where'd you go, chat? Oh, for cripe's sakes. Okay, I told chat to show up, and I don't know where chat went. Oh, there's chat. Don't worry, I'll edit all this out. All right, here we go. It's always a party. Okay, how about now? Can you see it clearly, or do I need to make it bigger?
You can see it.
Yeah. Yeah? Okay. All right. Okay. So what we have is a bunch of pieces of reasoning. And here's what I want to do. So before we review the concept of entailment, aka validity, aka logically correct arguments, and then move on to some other stuff, I'm actually going to jump ahead into another animal that we were talking about earlier. So this is what I'm about to do. Even though it's review from last week, it actually is chapter 3, section 1 that we're going to talk about this week. So if my jumping around is disconcerting to you, please don't hesitate to let me know, and I will do better at following the order of the text, or I will at least say this is what chapter and section we're on, so you know. Okay, so we already know that the focus of our study, broadly construed, is techniques for and determining whether or not an argument is valid, whether or not an argument's premises entail its conclusion, techniques for proving the conclusion of a valid argument, and we're working in a couple different systems to do that. But before we get into all of that, of course, we want to know what an argument is, right? So even though this concept of what an argument is introduced in chapter 3, we were actually working on it all the way back in chapter 1, section 1, okay? So let me just draw your attention to a few features that will help us as we're thinking about what it is when we talk about an argument and we talk about analyzing an argument and evaluating an argument. We already know from last week that an argument is a set of statements or set of a specific sort of sentence, one of which is supported by the other or others. So take example 1. This is a standard deck of playing cards. So if I draw a card at random from it, that card will be a king. So this is a very uncomplicated piece of reasoning insofar as it involves technically 3 parts. 2 of those parts are the support for the third part. And one way that we can talk about those parts is as follows. We've got, and I'll just go ahead and highlight, we've got what's known as a premise, and then we've got the part that's known as a conclusion. Okay, so if I'm going to go ahead and unhighlight, how do I know which is which? Well, in this case, we have what's known as an indicator word, so. Okay. Now, I think I misspoke earlier, and I apologize. I said that we've got 3 parts here. They're just 2. We've got the piece of evidence. This is a standard deck of playing cards. And then we have what follows from that. So what I'm doing in that second sentence after the word so is I'm saying that I infer from the standard deck of playing cards that the drawing of a card at random will be a king, right? Now, is this good reasoning? Well, one of the things we want to talk about is what constitutes good reasoning, but just go ahead and use your if you will, your intellectual instincts. And let's also bring to bear what you know about playing cards, right? So I'm terrible at probabilities, and I would probably be horrible at poker, and right, for a number of reasons. But I know enough to know, I think, that there are 52 cards in a deck. Anybody want to tell me if I'm wrong? Is that right, Jimmy? Okay. Am I also right that there are a total of 8 king faces, or 4? Oh, just 4. Okay. I thought it was like for 2 different. Oh, the suit is the king. I was thinking of 2 different colors, black and red. Okay, but I trust Jimmy. He knows more than I do. All right. And Jennifer's nodding, so I'm going to take you guys at your. All right. So do we agree that the inference is good? Namely, 4 out of 52. What's the likelihood of it being correct? Not very high. Does that make sense to say? But notice that initially, the first thing we want to do is identify what the pieces are, right? So before we do any qualitative assessment, right, we first want to know what we're dealing with. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have a sense of what's known as inferential flow, right? We talked a little bit about this when we were talking about the happy cows, right, last week. When you're given evidence, depending on, in the case of the happy cows, the structure in which that evidence is presented, right? There's no more information you need, and your mind infers almost seemingly automatically that great cheese comes from California, right? That's not always the case, right? There's information missing from this first argument, but that's okay. We still know that there is an inferential flow, if for no other reason than this indicator word. So we have indicator words and phrases. So one indicator word is so, another indicator word is therefore, and so forth. Okay, so just by way of a quick review, we don't have to go through all of this. Whoopsie, don't have to go through all of this, but let's just look at a few and then make sure that you're comfortable with what it is that we're talking about when we talk about an argument, right? And then talk about indicator words and phrases, okay? Next one, here once again we have so. Let's look at the setup though, because we're going to want to add to our repertoire the following technique. Wherever we can, we want to ascertain an argument's form. Okay? What do I mean by that? Well, an argument, whether or not, but in particular when it is valid, that is when the conclusion is entailed by the premises, you will be able to encapsulate, or the argument's already encapsulated, in such a way that there's a discernible form. And it doesn't matter what you put into that form. It's the form itself that's going to tell you about the entailment question, right? That's going to answer the question of entailment, okay? So read with me, and then we're going to take the argument's content and swap it out, but keep the form, all right? We know that the murderer was either Jackson or Harrison. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight or. I can highlight either as well, but I'm going to highlight or. We also know the murderer could not have been Harrison. So, indicator word, the murderer had to be Jackson. The form of this argument is what makes the argument valid, which is to say what makes the conclusion be entailed by the premises. Okay? So, if we pull out the content, we're left with the following. And bear with me because I should be able to do this. Add text. Okay. Okay, so we've got the murderer was either Jackson or Harrison. I'm going to take J, and then I'm going to use the word or, and I'm going to take the letter H. The letter J stands for Jackson is the murderer. The letter H stands for Harrison is the murderer. Then I'm going to eliminate again the sentence Harrison was the murderer, and I'm going to say not H. And I know this is ugly, so hold on for just a second. I'll fix it. And then, so the murderer is Jackson. So, can you see? I should probably move this over here. Okay, can you see this okay? J or H, not H, so J. Okay? And we've got another bit that we can put into the same form with the same result. The moon is made of green cheese or blue cheese. Everybody knows the moon's not made of green cheese, so the moon is made of blue cheese. And if we want to keep things extra clear, we can just say this is the conclusion, right? This is the premise. This is the premise. And we can do the same thing up here. Premise, premise, conclusion. Now, the order doesn't have to be laid out the way that I have each of these examples. This is just sort of a standard order. Either or, not one of the disjuncts, and then you're left with the other, right? And then still another one. And I think you remember the blue cheese, green cheese, because unless I'm mistaken, we did chat about this example before. It's a nice go-to. Once again, same form, right? We could say Barack Obama or Mitt Romney was the 44th U.S. president. Well, it wasn't Mitt Romney, so it was Barack Obama. Notice that in this example, we've just rejected the right side of the or, but we still end up with the same, the structure is still the same, okay? So form or structure is going to be super duper important to us. At present, in the first example, the standard deck of playing cards example, there is no discernible form. Now you might say, well, that's not clear to me, Mia. I don't know why there is no discernible form. Well, one way to answer, or one way to address the fact that it's not clear that there is no discernible form is this. If I already know what a bunch of forms are, right, then I can say, well, this doesn't fit any one of those forms. That's not super helpful to you though, right? I mean, you might say, well, I don't already know what those forms are. But another way for you to think about it is this. There is no sort of repetition, if you will, in the way that you see some repetition from the second example, right? For number one, we have standard deck of playing cards, and then the conclusion is a conditional claim, an if-then sentence, right? There's no way for us to really see any robust part of the conclusion in the premise that's offered, okay? But this will become clearer as we go forward. All right, now what I'd like us to do is this. I'm going to go ahead and scroll. I want to find, hold on. Okay, number 26. Sorry that this is kind of wobbly. When I go to scroll, it moves about. I don't want to make you dizzy. Look at number 26. My keys are either in the car or my jacket. I found my keys in my coat, so they must not be in the car. Does this look familiar? What are you thinking, Jennifer?
It looks like the one that we had done before, where it was pretty much like J or H, and then it was J or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's saying my keys are. So it's like saying like it's in either C or J. I found it in C, so it's not in. I mean, wait. I'm sorry. That says coat and jacket. So whatever. I saw it in my. It's either in my car or my jacket. I found it in my jacket, so it's not in my car.
Right.
So
right. And notice what we're importing though here, and this is where things can be a little bit tricky. We're importing the following: the knowledge that a set of keys can't be in two places at the same time. So we're importing here the idea that my keys are either in the car or my jacket, but not both. But the sentence doesn't say that, right? So one of the things that we want to think about is how affirming one side of a disjunction doesn't force us to deny the other side. If we want to do that, we'd need to very explicitly assert that it's a not both situation. Okay. All right. Now, whoopsie. Sorry, I'm doing it again. Come up here. Okay, let's take a look at 12 and 15. 12 reads as follows. If the Staples Center is in Los Angeles, then Mount Kilimanjaro is green. The Staples Center is in Los Angeles. It follows that Mount Kilimanjaro is green. So you might get thrown off in terms of evaluating the argument because you've got this peculiar sentence about Mount Kilimanjaro, right? But first, let's determine what's what. Is there an indicator word or phrase that tells you what is the conclusion and then by default, what are the premises?
Yeah. The fact that it says it follows
Good.
is a conclusion.
Oops.
And then for premises, it should be when it says, oh.
I know, sorry. I did something wonky. Bear with me. Where did we go? We went back up.
You're on 12.
Thank you. I can't remember. Okay, sorry. So highlight. There we go. You said it follows that. Yeah.
That conclusion, and then the part where it says, if the Staples Center is in Los Angeles, then Mount Kilimanjaro, I believe that should be the premises.
Right. So the first two sentences where I'm just going to define a sentence as starts with a capital, ends with a period. The first two sentences are the premises, and it follows that says, hey, yoo-hoo, my point is coming up, my conclusion's coming up, right? Now, you might not always get a conclusion or a premise, indicator, word, or phrase. And so you then rely on this notion of inferential flow, which is to say, given the way that the argument it has been written, are you directed toward a conclusion, or has a conclusion been asserted and now you're being given reasons to believe it, right? So what you want to do is think about this, effectively this dependent relationship. The conclusion is supposed to depend on the premises. The conclusion is supposed to be inferred from the premises. The premises imply the conclusion. Right, so we've got an argument which is a collected set of statements or sentences of a certain sort, one of which is supported by the other or others. The supporting sentences, the supporting statements, those are our premises. That's our evidence. Those are our reasons to believe. And then the conclusion is what we want to prove or what is derived from those, said to be derived from those premises. Okay. The next question for number 12 is the argument valid? In other words, do the premises entail the conclusion? Jimmy, what are you thinking?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an if-then, it's a conditional,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
And the condition has been met. The Staples Center is in Los Angeles.
Can you say more about the condition being met? Because that's super important for us.
Well, it's one of the Boolean operatives. I mean,
Yeah.
You have a conditional, which is an if-then, and then you have the biconditional, I believe, which is an if and only if.
Right. So
If the Staples Center is in Los Angeles, then. If then. That's
yeah.
the conditional.
Okay. So you're right that so the way that the so the if then sentence as well as the if and only if sentence or the conditional and the biconditional are two sentences that are actually, or sorry, rephrase. Those are two connectives that are actually built out of the Boolean operators that we'll look at. But you're right that they are connectives such that when you have an if and a then, the if part of the sentence is said to be the condition that when met guarantees the outcome, or in this case, the consequent, right? Now, you might say, okay, it's true that the Staples Center is in Los Angeles, but it's false that Mount Kilimanjaro is green. I mean, the sentence is false, right? But remember, what we're asking ourselves when we look to the question of validity is, or entailment is, on the assumption that our evidence is true, and we'll just say we accept that it is, does the conclusion follow, right? So the condition that's met is so here's some language that I'm going to throw out and that we'll get to later, but the condition that's met is called the sufficient condition. So even though you might say, well, that doesn't make sense at all in this case, the structure of the if-then claim is such that the if part, or what comes after the if more specifically, is considered the sufficient condition. When that condition is met, it's enough, or it guarantees the consequent, which is the then part. So sufficient condition, or the antecedent, is said to guarantee the consequent, or the then part. So as Jimmy rightly says, Staples Center satisfies that. The fact that we've asserted the second sentence satisfies that condition. Okay.
So, I have a question.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
So then we're looking at the arguments in the sense of like, it's specifically conditional. So it only, if the argument fits the structure that we're looking for, then it is logical, deemed logical.
It is valid. It is logically correct. The conclusion is entailed by the premises. Yeah. And one of the things that's nice about kind of getting comfortable with some of these forms early on is when we look at them, when we study them in a more technical way, you'll already say, oh yeah, I remember we chatted about this, right? We got to what we are talking about now because we were talking about a way in which this sort of argument plays out. Let me give you an example. Okay. All right, so why aren't you closing? Okay, I don't understand why it's not closing. Closed earlier. Okay. So same structure, different content. If I have 10 pennies, then I have 10 cents. I have 10 pennies. So I have 10 cents. And I'll just pull this up so that we can put them one on top of the other, right? Right, so we can see the same structure, yeah? Okay, now, one of the reasons why we want to be comfortable with this form, and by the way, right now I'm just focusing on the mechanics, and I'm trying sort of prey on your intellectual intuitions in a little bit. This argument is logically correct, as Jennifer rightly says. The conclusion is entailed by the premises. It's a valid argument. Here's an imposter. I'm just going to take the same. Actually, let me just do this. It'll be faster. I'm going to copy paste, but I'm going to change some stuff around. Okay. So bear with me. All right. Compare these two, right, side by side. Oops, sorry guys. Didn't mean to do that. Compare these two side by side and tell me why the argument on the left is valid, the argument on the right is not.
says you can have 10 cents and you can have 1 dime.
Okay, Hannah, thank you. And it is Hannah, not Hannah, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay,
You're welcome.
Hannah, elaborate. So walk us through the problem on in the argument on the right hand side. Walk us through the problem with saying in premise 2, hey, I have 10 cents in relation to the first premise, if I have 10 pennies, then I have 10 cents. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
For the argument on the left, you start off with the 10 pennies.
Yep.
So you know for sure that 10 pennies equals 10 cents. But with the one on the right, the second part of the argument started off with I have 10 cents. And 10 cents does not always imply 10 pennies because you can also have just 1 dime.
All right. Beautiful. Good. Okay, so before we go, we're going to work through a couple more exercises here. But first, let me just remind us of the following important concepts. Okay, so, and again, this is not necessarily in the order that we discussed them, that we discussed them in the text, but it's still stuff that we have talked about or are going to talk about this week, right? So, argument, entailment, which is, not ennailment, entailment, validity, logical correctness. Okay. Form. All right. So, argument, a set of statements, or so typically we say that we're talking about a certain sort of sentence, which is a statement. We'll say more about that. A set of statements or certain sentence, which we'll define in a moment, one of which is supported by the other or others. Okay? The statements in an argument are sentences that are true or false. That is, they have what's called a truth value. There's a bivalence to their truth values, right? The supporting statements are called premises. The supported statement is the conclusion, right? So even though, and Dr. Shi points this out a couple of times, and I think, gives us some great ways of thinking about this issue. This stuff may seem, really straightforward very much of the time, or at least some of the time. The reason why it's really great to just to make sure that we are very clear on what an argument is and this notion of inferential flow and determining what the premises and conclusion are, is so that when things do get tricky, we can at least begin with organizing things, right? So very often what I do, I'm an incredibly slow thinker, at least in my own mind, I'm a very slow thinker. And I get confused very easily. And so what I need to do is I need to slow it down. And what am I dealing with? Okay. I want to come back to that point in a little bit when we return to the very first page of the text that we talked about last week when we were sort of mapping out that argument. Okay. Because it's going to help us make some more sense of where we're going. Okay, so we know what an argument is. Last thing we want to talk about here is just a reminder about indicator words and phrases. As an FYI, once we are deep in the territory of the symbolic logic portion of our work, where we've got the symbolic logic connectives and we've got the symbolic logic simple sentences notation, we won't look for indicator words and phrases, right? Because we won't, that's not the territory that we're in. But in our daily lives, we're working in ordinary English territory all the time. So we don't get things laid out, nicely where we have numbered premises and then a line and then a conclusion. So having these indicator words and phrases is helpful. Okay, so indicator words and phrases, e.g., since, because, etc., alert us to premises, and indicator words and phrases, e.g., so, therefore, etc., alert us to the conclusion. Okay. Now, for our purposes, as I mentioned before, form is really important, right? So our study involves the form of statements and arguments, right? So we'll come back. Now we want to come back to this exercise set, right? So we're looking for form where we think we can find it. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to entailment. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have brought entailment up. So we say that an argument's premises entail the conclusion when it's impossible for the conclusion to be false if the premises are true. So an argument's premises entail the conclusion when it is impossible for the conclusion, come on, Mia, to be false if the premises, and I'm going to abbreviate premises as PRR, are true. And remember this if, really, yes, it's about the actual truth of the premises, but it doesn't have to be. In other words, we just say, I'm going to accept the premises as true, like we did with the Kilimanjaro argument. Just accept them as true, even if they're not. But certainly, if an argument's premises entail its conclusion and the premises are actually true, yes, it will be impossible, right, it will be impossible for the argument's conclusion to be false. And then we're going to get into another evaluation concept at that point. How are we doing? What do we think?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
Forgive me for being naive. If you go back to the 10 pennies,
Yeah.
10 cents, that conditional.
Yeah.
If I have 10 pennies, then I have 11 cents. I have 10 pennies. Therefore, I have 11 cents.
Not naive at all, Jimmy. What you've done is highlight the fact that the 10 pennies, 10 cents example that I used, it kind of fudges in the sense that I've preyed upon your content knowledge to help you see the logical entailment, right? Think about it this way. If it is true that having 10 pennies means you have 11 cents, and you do have 10 pennies, then you will have 11 cents, right? It's similar to, let's go back to, so there you've got some content that's flawed, correct?
Oh, unless you already had a penny. All the information, there could be missing information.
Well, please hold on to that and don't let me forget. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, but what you have in the structure, it is valid.
Right, and so one of the things that we want to think about is there's no amount of adding information that's going to make this argument invalid, right? What the flaw is not in the structure, the flaw is in the fact that that first sentence is false. If I have 10 pennies, then I have 11 cents, that sentence is false. But if it's true, right? I think, did I make a little kid cry last week? Did we talk about this? It's one of my favorites. If I didn't, I should have done. Did I talk about the candy? I'm pretty sure I did.
Yes, I think you did.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do it again because it was so much fun. But first, Jennifer, what are you thinking?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. You said that if it says if I have 10 pennies, then I have 10 cents, whatever, that's like false. What for the 11-cent situation? What if it said if I have 11 pennies, then I have 10 cents? Would that be considered a valid statement?
Okay, so this is a valid argument. The conclusion is entailed, right? There's nothing you can do.
I did not see that before. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So it doesn't matter what you put in here. You can make it 11 pennies. You can make it, if I have 11 pennies, I have 50 cents. You can do whatever you want, right? And that's what Jimmy was pushing on, right?
Not looking at the.
No, that's okay. So let's go back now to what Hannah said. When I say, therefore, or so I have 10 pennies, Hannah says, not necessarily, right? Hannah says, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Hannah says, I could have a dime. I could have, right? So in other words, let's think about this. An argument, let me rephrase. An argument is invalid when the premises do not guarantee the conclusion. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the Word doc and then I'll come back to the example again. Okay. An argument is invalid when the premises do not entail the conclusion. In other words, that is to say, when the premises are true, but the conclusion can be false or is false. And this is, if you ever feel like you're playing mental twister when we're going through this, please know it's normal. It's like puberty. It sucks, but it's normal and natural. Please also remember, nobody, I think, in the history of humanity was worse at logic than I was. Which means if I can do it, anybody can do it. Okay. One of the things that you'll want to do is first, I mean, obviously be dedicated, be diligent, keep working, but also be kind to yourself, right? Just give yourself time. One of the reasons why the textbook works the way it does is to give you the opportunity to work a little bit, think about what happened, work a little more, think about what happened, and then, practice. And if you want more practice than the textbook has, you just say the word and I'll give it to you. The more you practice, the better. Okay? All right, so let's come back to this thing here. Oops. So, just as a reminder, this argument on the left is valid and this argument is invalid. And if I could type over on top of it, I would. I should actually share it on my iPad so I could write on top of it, but this is a bad argument. Okay. Let me try there was another one that I wanted to try here. Here we go. Number 15. If it's cloudy outside, it's raining. It's not cloudy, so it's not raining. So once again, we've got our indicator word, right? So we want to make sure that we know what we're dealing with. That's the first thing to think about. Then the next thing to think about is whether or not the premises entail or guarantee the conclusion. Now, my advice is this. Go ahead and replace the it is cloudy, it is raining elements with something else. I don't know, take the 10 pennies again. If I have 10 pennies, then I have 10 cents. I don't have 10 pennies, so I don't have 10 cents. Now, if you're like me, hearing that, the verbal is too fast. I need to slow down. I need to put it in a certain form. Okay, so let's do this. And while you're thinking about this, I'm going to go work this other one.
That second one, sense because you already have 10 pennies. So you have. Oh,
Yeah, keep going.
I do not have 10. Wouldn't it be valid the second one?
Well, hold on just one second. Let me fix up this and make sure I don't mess it up. Okay, so let's look at the second one. If I have 10 pennies, I have 10 cents. I don't have 10 pennies. But does that mean I don't have 10 cents?
Oh, no.
Right. I could have...
The same like the two nickels or one guy.
Right. So I apologize because when I originally wrote it, I inadvertently made it valid. I did what we have over here on the left. And then I realized, oh, I can't do that. I mean, if I'm trying to show them an invalid argument, that's not going to work. Right? So the one on the right is an imposter of the one on the left. So so go back to, and I know Jennifer, you've got something, but just really quick, let me just reiterate and bring to bear something that Jimmy said earlier. Jimmy said that the sufficient condition, or the if part of the claim, the part that's associated with the if clause, when that sufficient condition obtains, it guarantees the then part, right? The consequent. Similarly, when you deny the consequent, and the consequent is a necessary condition, without that necessary condition, that sufficient condition won't obtain, right? So when you deny the consequent, you necessarily deny the antecedent. And again, this is stuff that we're going to get to in more technical fashion later on. But does this make some sense? You affirmed the antecedent, you affirmed the clause associated with the if part of the claim earlier, and so so you guaranteed the consequent. Now this version involves denying the consequent, and so denying the antecedent. Whereas notice that what Hannah was saying about the initial invalid argument shows us that there's a lack of entailment, but the same thing happens when we deny the antecedent, right? Just because this sufficient condition does not obtain does not mean that it negates the consequent. Oops. All right, so hold on just a second. Oh, actually, sorry, you know what? Let me change this. Oh dear. I have no idea what just happened. I don't know how to get rid of the grid. Oh, there we go. Okay. Is everybody ready? If Pierce College is in Santa Monica, then Pierce College is in California. Pierce College is not in Santa Monica, so Pierce College is not in California. if I have 10 pennies, then I have 10 cents. I don't have 10 pennies, so I don't have 10 cents. If it's cloudy, then it's raining. It's not cloudy, so it's not raining. I would imagine, guys, that one of these iterations of the same form resonates with you as being problematic, right?
There are other areas in California.
Right. So notice what you're doing, Hannah. So because I want you to remember it, because you're going to bring this technique to bear, and then you're going on a number of areas, but then you're going to develop even more sophisticated techniques. What you're doing is you're saying, the premises, even if I accept the premises as true, right, doesn't guarantee that I'm going to accept the conclusion. So think about it this way. I can believe the premises without thereby being forced to believe the conclusion. So what you've done, the technique that you enlisted, was known as demonstrating non-consequence, which is to say you have accepted the premises and then you've falsified the conclusion. What do people think?
Why is it called demonstrating non-consequence?
Because the conclusion is not a consequence of the premises. When the conclusion is entailed by the premises, the conclusion is a consequence of those premises. That's just what its existence is, right? When we demonstrate non-consequence by way of falsifying the conclusion, we show, look, there's at least one exception to this conclusion being true. I've just demonstrated that it's not a consequence. Does that language help a little bit?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so let's do this. Even if you're feeling a little bit uncertain, let's keep moving forward. Here's what I'm thinking. What do I want? Here we go. Here's what I'm thinking. It similar to watching a movie, even though you really can't figure out what's going on at the beginning, is a good idea, because eventually you retroactively fill in the gaps, right? Or you say, oh, now I understand why that happened, right? If you just keep going. I think if you're having any trouble, if we keep going, especially if you keep practicing, this will yield. It will make sense. All right. The only thing we're going to do here is determine whether or not the thing is valid. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and assume that we're comfortable with identifying premises and conclusion. So number one, if Larry studies hard, he will succeed in school. If he succeeds in school, he will become a successful person. So if he studies hard, he will become a successful person. Intellectual gut. First, tell me what you think. Intellectual gut, valid or invalid?
Invalid?
Okay. Tell me what you're thinking.
There are just many ways to be a successful person that isn't succeeding in school.
Okay, really good point. Question for you though, Hannah. Given the information, right? So remember, on the assumption that this is all the information we're going to get, must it be the case that if Larry studies hard, therefore he will be successful? It's true, studying hard, while it may guarantee success, maybe there are other ways also to achieve success. It may not be the only way, but it is one way, presumably.
seems valid to me according to the structure.
Okay, Tamim, good. What do you, so can you say more about that?
So like, I mean, according to structure, if you see, says like, if Larry studies hard, he will succeed in school. If he succeeds in school, he will become a successful person.
Okay.
So,
Whoops, sorry about that.
according to like, if you make it like a conditional, like probable conditional, so if he studies hard, he will be successful, definitely. And then according to argument structure too, or definition, it supports one part of sentence supports the other part. So that's what I think.
Okay, is it fair to say then that we've got this? I'm gonna sort of restate what you said a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tamim was clear that the structure is such that even though Hannah's exactly right that you could be given more information, it's true. Given the information that we have, is it the case that, and I'm sorry, the way that I started that sentence was ungrammatical, or would yield an ungrammatical sentence. Let me restate it. Is it the case, nevertheless, that the information given is sufficient to grant the conclusion? And does it help when I extract from the content the a little bit more just the form? What happens with B in this restructuring? Yeah, Melvin, good for you. So here's what I was thinking, and forgive me because I want to say it was, I don't know if it was Berman last week or you. Somebody said when we were talking about the happy cows argument that we had something like this. Yeah. Oops. And I'll just put the line so we know what we're talking about here, right? Now, this argument form and this argument form are not identical. We'll learn that. The identity symbol is a different animal. But because you had mentioned it last week, we've got this transference, right? And notice that the if-then structure recurs in the conclusion up here, right? So if A then B, B then C, and so forth. Okay. So Hannah, I really appreciate your sharing what your thinking was, because it's crucial to this point that's made, forgive me, it's crucial to the point made in chapter, is it chapter 1 or chapter 2? In the section of the chapter, in the section called augmentation. Right? So here's the short story. If it's clear that the information that's given guarantees the conclusion, then what we're saying is that information is sufficient. It is enough. Now, would you like to say that there are other ways to become successful, that studying hard is not sufficient? Or sorry, rephrase. Is not the only sufficient way? Yes, you could say that, Hannah, but insofar as we've got this sufficient condition, right, that we're accepting for the sake of the argument, then we do, when it's tied with the consequent being a sufficient condition in the second premise, we do have enough. I know that was a little convoluted, but does that make some sense?
So should we just focus purely on what information is given to us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, having said that, I don't want to torture you, but remember that in, I think it's chapter 1, section 4, there's a distinction between deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. So please don't let me forget that we do want to cover that, because I think it should really help you solidify this point you've just made, which is excellent. Okay, so argument number 1 is valid. Okay. I'm just going to jump over to number 4. Either there's free will or I'm not responsible. But there is no free will, so I'm not responsible. What does your intellectual gut say? And then once you're done with your intellectual gut, then we can work through it.
This is valid.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, how is it? How do we work through it? Well, let's do this. I'm going to copy paste. I'm sorry, let me make all this, the font bigger. Okay. Oops. All right, so copy paste. Now, Hannah, do me a huge favor. Could you break up the argument element so that we have the premises one on top of the other, and then we draw a line, we have the conclusion?
Okay. So, there is free will, I guess, would be A.
Okay.
And if there is free will, then I'm not responsible for my actions, so that would be B.
Okay. Quick question. Even though you are correct that you could implicate the sentence to get to an if then, the let's stick with what is literally written. So what sort of sentence is this? Is this an if then, or is it neither or?
Neither or.
Okay. So we've got A, or, and you said B, or so not responsible, B.
Yes.
Okay. What's next?
Since there is no free will. So there's no A.
Good for you.
And I'm not responsible for my actions, so then there is no B.
Awesome. Good. And what I really appreciate about what you did was you didn't get thrown off by the fact that you had this negation, right? Because all we're doing is this. We're being given 2 alternatives, right? And when one is eliminated, the other is what's left. And it doesn't matter if the other that's left is a negated sentence. Good for you. Okay, so I know we want to say something about distinguishing deductive and inductive arguments, but first, if I may, let's capitalize on the work you just did. If you want this document, I'll go ahead and post it. Just let me know. But in the meantime, let's go to our textbook. So please tell me how things are going with the textbook. One of the things that I try to do at the beginning of let me rephrase. I try to make sure that at the beginning of the semester, we're not just like rushing. But as I mentioned at the outset of our meeting today, it will be the case that, things become a bit more complicated as we go. And so if for no other reason, then we're dealing with some technical and abstract concepts and developing the skills that go with dealing with those concepts. So because we're starting off a little slowly, you may not have done much with the textbook, but I really do want to hear from you how it's going. It is imperative that you find the material, that you find the books that we use useful, helpful. So just because, Dr. Gillis and I say, oh, we think this is going to work really well, doesn't mean that's what your experience will be. And it's really important what you think. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that very first exercise. I think this was what we did. Tell me if I'm wrong. Do you guys remember that we were working on this, what's it called? I can use my words. We were working on this exercise. I think this was it, right? Is that right, Berman? Okay, yeah. So what I'd like us to do is revisit it. Let's see, where did I put what I want? Hold on. Okay. If memory serves, we basically started making effectively like a chart. And I'd like us to anticipate where we're going by way of some notation that I'm going to share with you. Okay, so hold on, let me find what I want. All right. Okay, so here's what our options are. When number 1 says one or more of these people is guilty, and then we get a list, Pia, Quinn, and Raquel, right? What we're saying is that if one or more is guilty, then that means that Pia could be guilty, or Quinn could be guilty, or Raquel could be guilty. Now, already I'm in, I think it should be chapter 4 territory. Don't worry about the notation right now. Like I said, I'm just working in this case on giving you kind of a heads up of where we're going, okay? In terms of how we're going to learn techniques for not just determining, but eventually proving the conclusion of a valid argument. But for right now, what I want to do is introduce some notation and some structuring that's going to help us with the determination issue, right? So the question here is, who can you be sure is guilty, right? Is it one person, is it 2 people, or is it all 3 that we can be sure is guilty, okay? So this is premise number 1, where this little lowercase v is a symbol for or. It's also called a disjunction. I'm going to assume by just asserting these 3 letters to stand for Pia is guilty, Quinn is guilty, Raquel is guilty. I'm going to assume that exhausts the possibility, so that number 2 is already built into this first bit of notation. Pia never works without Quinn, which is to say, if Pia is guilty, oops, I'm really bad at notating with my trackpad mouse. And here's an arrow. If Pia is guilty, so is Quinn. Now, let's go back to something that Jimmy mentioned earlier, this idea of the condition being satisfied. So we don't know that Pia is guilty. We just know that Pia being guilty will guarantee that Quinn is also guilty. Why? Because Pia never works without Quinn. Okay. And then Raquel never works alone, which is to say, if Raquel is guilty, then at least one of the other 2 is also guilty. Oh, let me do it this way. Sorry. Pia or Quinn. What do we think? Does this make sense so far? In terms of what I'm trying to do with this notation?
Yes.
Okay. And don't be shy, guys, if you say, wait, Mia, what are you doing now? What's going on? Okay, next step. So here's what I'm going to do, just because this will be a standard approach that we take later on. I'm going to put a little line underneath this last set of givens, right? And normally I would number these, but I'm just trying to figure out, if I can, given this information, who I can be sure is guilty, right? So remember, Hannah, you're concerned about there not being enough information. in that other example, the question is this: does what we are given provide sufficient information for determining who is guilty? Doesn't mean we get everybody. There may be more than one guilty person, but are we given enough information to determine at least one guilty person? Okay, so now I'm going to try something, and bear with me because we'll see this as we go forward and we're working in proofs. What if we assume that Pia is guilty? So I've indented my sequence and I've said, by way of that indentation and then writing the letter P, I'm going to assume Pia is guilty. If Pia is guilty, what do we know? Jimmy, this one's for you. Yeah. Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
Right? So if P, then Q, I'm assuming it's P. So if it is P, it's Q. All right. Now I'm going, that's as far as I can go. There's nothing else I can infer. So I'm going to stop that line of inquiry. Now I'm going to assume that Quinn is guilty. Now this might feel weird, but bear with me. If I'm assuming that Quinn is guilty, then it follows I'm saying Quinn is guilty. There's nothing else I can do now, right? Because remember, when we were talking about validity earlier, affirming the consequent doesn't get you anything. We'll study that in more formal detail later, but we have a basic idea of what the problem is. Go back to our 10 pennies, 10 cents example. Okay. So I can't do anything more here. Now here's my last one. I'm going to assume that Raquel is guilty. So what I'm doing, you'll see this when we move forward. I've just worked through a proof by cases, which is to say this or this or this is the case. I don't know which, could be all three. What I'm going to do is say, well, let me assume that this is the case. What happens? Now let me assume this is the case. What happens? And then finally, let me assume this is the case. Once again, on the assumption that Raquel is guilty, what follows?
Someone else must be guilty with her because she never works alone.
Right. And since all we're given is that the someone else must be either Pia or Quinn, right? I infer that. Yes. Now, you might say, oh, so it must be Pia or Quinn. Well, we're not given this. We could say you can't be sure, there's not enough information. But let's go back to what we did just a moment ago. We said that when we have or cases, it's this or it's this, and maybe you have multiple or cases as we have here. It's this or it's this or it's this. Guess what? We eliminate the cases. What did we say? We said, well, let's assume that Pia is guilty. What happened when we did that before? If Pia is guilty, Quinn is guilty. Let's further assume, since we've got the right side of this or, let's assume that Quinn is guilty. Right? If we're saying that Quinn is guilty, then, sorry about my bad writing, we're saying Quinn is guilty. Look at what's happened in every single case. Quinn. 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 I've exhausted all the possibilities and I can at least say that Quinn is guilty. I don't know about anybody else, but I can at least say that Quinn is guilty. Now, is this the conclusion that we drew last week? And if it is, great. We've just gone at it a slightly different way, in a way that's going to be appropriate to the systems that we're learning. If we didn't get the same answer last week, why not? What was different? Did we do anything wrong? Did we overlook something? So here's what I'm after. Yes, as I mentioned before, I'm after partly kind of giving us a heads up on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it going forward. But I'm also interested in having us see that, on the assumption that you're comfortable with the setup and the inferences that we must make given the scenario, right? We've got a solid, effectively an airtight way to get to an answer. What do we think? And if you haven't already, go ahead and work this exercise. You can do it now, you can do it on your own, and see what happens when you pick this, that, or the other answer. Remember, these are no stakes exercises, right? This is all you're doing is working some practice and getting some feedback. There are no points. You won't be penalized for getting the wrong answer, right? And you'll get some feedback. And then the other part that's helpful too is, as you're working through sections of a given chapter, the concepts are built upon, so you'll get further explanations as to what's going on and why the answer is the way it is. All right, but what do we think so far? And by the way, you can always just say, I don't know what I think, Mia. I'm just getting my bearings. Or you might say, I stopped listening because it became confusing and I'm frustrated and I'll figure it out later, right? I mean, there are any number of responses you can have. And there's no right response, okay? I just want you to know what you're experiencing so that you can keep working on understanding your own mind, how your mind works. Okay, I check in and out all the time. There are, ways that I just kind of lose track, and then I say, forget it, I'll deal with it later. And then sometimes something resonates with me and it clicks. Okay, I don't know how it will be for you. Okay, so what I want to do is go ahead and erase all this. And then look at our textbook together. Oh, wait, no, that's not that. Hold on. I want us to look at our textbook together so we can sort of see where we are, okay? So last week we worked on, kind of jointly, we worked on logic and form. And we also worked on entailment. Hold on just 1 second. I want to push this over. Okay. So given what we were working on earlier, do you notice that the way that our textbook is presenting material is similar to what we just did with those exercises, where we were trying to ascertain, yes, the form of the argument, but we were also, in so doing, ascertaining the form of the sentence, right? So what we're after here is understanding that the content of a given sentence is not what's going to be at issue for us when we're trying to understand the logical structure of a sentence, but also the logical structure of an argument, okay? The other item that we looked at, as you know, we spent a lot of time on it, certainly this week, but is the idea of entailment or validity, is the idea that, is the idea that an argument's conclusion is entailed by the premises when the premises guarantee the conclusion. Right? Now, going back to our discussion of invalidity, remember Hannah was talking about this term that I mentioned, namely demonstrating non-consequence. And a way that you can demonstrate non-consequence is by, and we did a little bit of this, but I want to do it one more time, is by what's known as the counterexample method. So what if we take this same argument take the same argument, rephrase. Take the same form and replace the content. Okay, you ready? All dogs are animals. All cats are animals. So, all dogs are cats. This sentence is actually true. This sentence is actually true. This sentence is actually false. When true premises do not yield a true conclusion, the argument is invalid, or the premises fail to entail the conclusion. Even if the premises and conclusion are all true, that isn't what makes the argument valid. This test, this counterexample method, is used when we think the argument is invalid and we want to demonstrate the non-consequence. But don't get suckered into thinking that an argument is valid just because all of the elements are in fact true. Let me see if I can come up with one like that. Oh yeah, there I go. True. And tell me if I'm wrong, by the way. I think I've got this right in terms of the actual truth values, right? True, true, true. But this does not mean the argument is valid. Why? Because the form does not force the conclusion as we see here. Okay. Now, I promise you, because remember, if I can do this, anybody can do this. I promise you, after a while of working on it, the structural issue with an invalid argument just becomes clearer and clearer, because we'll have more ways to think about what validity is, right? What entailment is. We'll have these techniques to understand and work with the logical structure of a sentence and the logical structure of an argument. Okay? All right, so the last thing I think it's the last thing that I definitely want to make sure that we get to. Oh yeah, a couple other things that we want to get to. But so remember earlier, Hannah, you had rightly brought up this question of information and evaluating an argument. One of the one way to help us make sense of the enoughness, if you will, of the information in a valid argument is to think about the difference between deductive and inductive logic. So here's one way you can approach the thing. Any argument whose premises do not entail the conclusion, any invalid argument, may in fact be pretty decent as an inductive argument. An inductive argument is an argument whose power is based not on the form or structure of the reasoning, but instead on the amount of and relevance of information, right? So what do you think is the likelihood of the sergeant winning the lottery? Pretty good? I don't know. What are the chances of any one of us winning the lottery? Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. Is it fair to say the chances of any of us winning the lottery is pretty low? It's probably not going to happen, which means that the sergeant, it's true, we'd say it's true the sergeant won't win. We don't know for sure, we can't guarantee it, but it's pretty true, it's pretty unlikely that the sergeant will win, right? What we know in this case has to do with probability, or sorry, our evaluation, forgive me, I should say, has to do with probability, right? And what we know about, in general, our common knowledge about lottery winnings, right? So when we bring to bear our experience to make an evaluation of an argument, and that experience is in fact central to evaluating the argument, we've got induction. Okay. So Hannah, when you were earlier talking about whether or not we had enough information on one of our valid arguments, oh yeah, it was about studying, right? As long as the information that's given guarantees the outcome, it's okay that it's not enough in terms of what we know from experience. Does that distinction make some sense?
Yeah,
okay.
It does.
Okay. So that's another section that we want to get to. The last bit, now what I haven't done is spent time on weird cases of validity, only because when we're first starting out trying to understand the concept of validity, the weird cases sometimes feel really disorienting. That said, do make sure that you walk through it. If you have questions, problems, confusions, let me know. What I do want to do though is make sure that we finish with understanding the notion of soundness, because I think that's actually going to help us a fair amount. And then what else was there that I wanted us to get to? I think, let me just double check that I'm right about this. Complete the previous, oh, why is it doing that to me again? Poop. Hold on. I think I have to mark things complete, otherwise they don't want to. No, that shouldn't be right. Oh, sorry guys. I forget how I did this before. As you know, I'm learning the ins and outs of this textbook with you. And I thought I had dealt with this issue. Hold on just a sec. I think what I have to do in order to in order to get what I want is to mark things complete, and I don't want to waste your time with that. So what I'm going to do instead is just bring over our notes. So a couple of other items that we want to make sure we get to, and then you know, take your time working through this. Don't forget that the practice is going to be helpful to you in completing a quiz, and a quiz you can take countless times before it closes. So my advice is, depending on how you're feeling about things, when you take the quiz, if anything goes wrong, kind of mark that, go back into the text, do the exercises associated with that section, do the extra exercises at the end, talk to me, talk to Lindsay, talk to each other, and then go back into the quiz. Use the quiz because you can repeat it as many times as you want before it closes. Use the quiz also to help you use the quiz as a practice mechanism, right? Because sometimes working through the quiz exercises will be itself a form of practice and will reinforce concepts. Okay, so the couple of items that I wanted to get to before we finish, so we got to induction and deduction. Oh, and I'm sorry, one other point. The augmentation discussion, it is under the weird cases of validity section. Hold on just one second. Are we in, what chapter are we in? Yeah. So even though I haven't done a lot with weird cases of validity, which is chapter 2, augmentation is a concept that we discussed. And I think that is going to be useful to you in reinforcing the concept of entailment or the concept of validity, okay? And then another item that we'll want to talk about is necessity versus contingency. Then the last thing that we want to, that I want to get at is the notion of soundness, okay? Our work together will not will be less focused on the concept of soundness, but it's an important concept to know. Our focus is going to be on entailment or validity. Okay, so necessary versus contingent sentences. So let me try the following. When an argument's premises entail the conclusion, we say that, whoops, what did I just do? There we go. When an argument's premises entail the conclusion, we say the conclusion follows necessarily from the premises. In other words, necessity means the premise, it means the conclusion must be true, right? It's got this dependent relationship, okay? And just to reiterate, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just to reiterate, assuming, right, the premises are true. Okay, so what are we talking about when we're talking about necessity? Well, and we've just talked about necessity in terms of the relationship between the premise or premises and the conclusion. Let's also just talk about sentences being necessarily true. Sometimes people, depending on the sentence, they'll say that they're vacuously true. They don't really help much. But let's talk a little bit about necessary versus contingent sentences. A necessary sentence is one that is always true, i.e., we can, or in other words, another way to put it is, the sentence is necessarily true, right? So, here are some couple of examples. A is identical to itself, right? That'll be a necessarily true sentence. We can say that, who do we say we said was guilty, right? So Quinn is guilty, or it's not the case that Quinn is guilty, right? So sentences that are necessarily true are sentences that under every possible interpretation always come out true, right? A contingently true sentence, did I spell that right? Nope. A contingently true sentence is true under certain circumstances. Or the way that we'd say it's contingently true is, well, it could be true, could be false. It will be true or false depending on certain factors, right? So, the sentence could be something like, Mia is jealous of Jimmy right now because Jimmy's eating what looks like something really yummy. I've got something yummy too, but I'm yapping so much I'm not eating it. Right?
Being like immoral right now.
No, my gosh, no. I hope here's what we need to do, folks. We need to eat and drink. This is like as seminar style as we're gonna get. I mean, and in fact, sadly, I don't have one of my puppies is with me. But I love this environment to the extent that I get my classroom puppies all the time, right? So yeah, eat away. I'm just jealous, that's all.
Well, I was in a meeting like last week, and my girlfriend was here, and I had a Q-tip here, and I'm sitting there, and I'm not even wearing, and I've got it in my ears, and she's like, "What are you doing?" So I get lost. I forget that other people here. I can't see anybody else but you.
So yeah, go ahead. Q-tip. Floss your teeth.
Oh, yes, basically. I mean, I wasn't even paying attention, and sometimes I start doing, my hands, and I'm,
No, that's totally
I
fine.
I offend no one.
No, not at all. But you have so this, here I'll take a bite. Hold on. And forgive me for chewing with my mouth open, but no, I'm no longer jealous of Jimmy. So the sentence was true before, but circumstances have changed. Now it's not true. All right, now, arguably by themselves, necessary sentences, contingent sentences aren't super exciting, all right? But when we start to move into looking at the structure of these sentences, we'll see what the value is of talking about a necessarily true sentence, a contingent sentence. We'll also talk about necessarily false sentences, that is, sentences that can never be true. And in fact, we want to talk about sentences that are always false, because they'll be useful to us in some of the work that we're going to be doing. Okay, but I wanted to draw your attention to that. Please know that. Sorry, I'm finished chewing. Please know that the quizzes that we work are quizzes involving the material that you've covered. That material is, yes, I'm highlighting certain concepts and skills, but please know that the quizzes cover a number of areas that I might mention but don't really talk about, or that I don't even talk about at all. Don't stress if you run into trouble on some of those exercises. One of the things that I'll want to do is this, at the end of the semester, and while we're working together, I want to do this as well. I want to know, how those quizzes are going, so that that what it is that I really want to emphasize is what's going well for you on those quizzes. That's what I'm most interested in. All right. So think about it this way now. Let's go back. So let me try to make the necessary versus contingent distinction useful to the work we've been doing so far. We treat all sentences in the premises of an argument as true, right? We don't, they may be contingently true, right? They may be necessarily true, which is very helpful. But what we don't do is say, oh, I know this sentence is false, and so the argument's no good. No, right? Remember, entailment is not about the actual truth or falsity of the sentence, of the premises, but instead we accept them as true. So understand, you would say, okay, the sentence is contingently true. But I'm going to treat it as though I know for sure it's true. I might even treat it as a necessarily true sentence, just for the sake of moving forward with the argument. Okay. Last thing, though, to talk about is the concept of soundness. So what we've been talking about is logical correctness, validity, entailment. What we really want, though, is an argument that is the gold standard of deduction, and that is a sound argument. Okay, so sound arguments are valid and the premises are actually true. I'm putting that in caps, right? Here's why. By definition, sound arguments are valid. Okay, it's part of the definition. But the converse isn't the case. It's not the case that just because all sound arguments are valid and the premises are actually true, it doesn't mean that all valid arguments are sound, right? So some valid arguments are sound and some are unsound. Okay, so example, we talked about this last week. Sound argument, right? Mitt Romney or Barack Obama was the 44th U.S. president, right? Mitt Romney, come on, Mia, was not the 44th U.S. president. Barack Obama was. Right? Actually true, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama was president. Actually true, it wasn't Mitt Romney. Right? So valid, and the premises are true, which makes the thing sound. Here is a valid but unsound argument. Oops, let's do this. Valid but unsound. What do you think I'm going to use? The moon is made of, right? Blue or green cheese. The moon is not made of blue cheese. So the moon is made of green cheese. Right? So it's valid, but it's unsound. Oops, I should just do it this way. Right? All invalid arguments, right? By definition, they're going to be unsound, right? one of the ways that I think about the work that we're doing right now, also in the future, but especially right now, is we're like doing some strength training through stretching. We're not doing like heavy weightlifting. We're stretching. And I don't know how it works because I don't do kinesiology, but I hear tell that there are stretching exercises that will improve your strength. And that's what I take us to be doing intellectually with this stuff. Okay, so if you feel unbalanced, if you feel confused, right, don't worry about it. It's sort of the analog to your muscles being sore, right? And once you get, one of the things that's really nice about this work is once you get the system, and by the system I just mean a basic grasp of the system of validity and also of soundness, everything falls into place. Okay. As far as stuff on our to-do list, what I don't want to do is overload you in terms of know this, know that, and yap at you and all the rest of it. I'm really interested in, highlighting concepts that we're going to use, hashing out questions, problems, confusions, working practice. But really a lot of the benefit to you, I think, is going to be just taking your time to work through the text. So for example, I'd love to spend time with you, whether it's during office hours or during our class meeting, going over exercises, confusions, and whatever else. And then the bulk of the time can be spent working through the text, right? So there's nothing that I'm dying to say. I'm very happy to work some more exercises with you if you want. But I think you're in good shape to get started on the first bit. I would like to share with you, though, before we leave, how the quiz is going to look. So just so you know, I'm used to like making my own quizzes and my own exams and all of that. And so given the way that the textbook is laid out, I'm using what's part of the textbook for what do I mean by that? Basically, I'm using the exercises that have been generated for the textbook, right? As opposed to making up my own in connection with the textbook. So one of the things I want to do is take a couple minutes to look at that. We've got our quiz, and everybody remembers how all this stuff is laid out, right? So from our homepage, right, we can obviously go into the syllabus to see how things are laid out. You could always just click over here, right, for LCA quiz 1. That's Logic Course Adventure quiz 1. But I like to go into the week so that I am reminded of what it is that I'm supposed to be thinking about, reading, and doing, right? Okay, so I click on quiz number 1. And this is some verbiage to help you get going. And then take the quiz. And it should be the case that all of the exercises lay out. So take a look, for example, at exercise 1. You'll notice that it has a family resemblance to the Pia, Quinn, Raquel exercise, right? That we were working on together. And then you want to identify the premises and conclusion, but do it in such a way as to make sure that the argument is going to be valid, right? So so notice that what's not given to you is any indicator word or phrase. So you don't know which is which. what you want to do is basically make your own argument, and you're going to make your own argument in such a way as to make sure that the conclusion, whatever you pick as the conclusion, is entailed by the premises. Right? Here, just go back into the text, look up the definition, right? You'll also notice you can look at the text to find the definitions, right? It's not cheating doing that. What you're doing is you're engaging with the concepts, you're engaging with the text, right? My suspicion is that you're not just going to mindlessly type stuff up. You're actually going to be looking at what you're doing and thinking about it, and that is going to help you with the skills that we're working on building. Okay, so a bunch of definitional stuff, some more skills stuff, which is good, right? And every quiz has more than, I think every quiz is like more than 10 exercises, but don't forget too, if I'm not mistaken, there's no time limit. So, it's not like each attempt that you make is going to close after a certain time window has been completed. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. Questions, problems, confusions. Is there anything that you want to go over before we break off and you go logic course adventure? Or you go on the logic course adventure. I'm sorry. That's what I meant to say. I'll just take some bites while you're thinking about whether or not you have anything you want to talk about.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this about, but are you going to post the document when you were writing the books?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I know your name is Daniel Berman, but last week we had 2 Daniels in the class, and somebody said to address them by their last name. Was that you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you have a preference, though? Do you prefer Daniel or do you prefer Berman?
That's pretty often.
You what?
It's pretty often that people call me by my last name.
Okay. Berman it is. So, Berman, you want all those documents we worked on?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, consider it done. I will, if I don't post them today, I'll post them first thing tomorrow. Actually, I'm really glad, thank you for mentioning that. I will post documents from a given week's conversations, work, whatever. I'll post it in that week. So I will post the documents we were working on today under week 1. Week 2, sorry. And I'll just figure out a title for them. I'll just upload them into that window. Okay, so look out for them tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, I'll make sure to.
Oh yeah, and if you don't see them, yell at me. Either I failed to post them like I promised, or maybe they're just not obvious, it's not obvious where they should be. Anything else? Thank you for raising that. Okay, you good to go? You'll let me know if you have questions, problems, confusions. I'm around. You'll visit with Lindsay, chat with each other. Don't be shy about using our, I think hold on a sec. Let me look and see if I'm right that we have a class discussion forum. If we don't, I'll post one. Yeah, here we go. So under Let's Talk, if you guys want to post questions, problems, confusions, obviously I'll look out for those postings, but you can also set those up together. You can also answer those for each other. In addition, you might, as time goes on, you might say, oh, I want to start a Zoom study group. So, don't be shy about working together. All right. And in the meantime, be safe and be cool as possible. And if I don't talk to you before next Tuesday, I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good one.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.